Okay, that's great. I'd like to hand over to my colleague Tim now, who will introduce you to the session today. Thank you, Tim.
Good afternoon and a very, very, very warm welcome to this engagement event for the Green Home Finance Accelerator. My name's Tim Cook. I'm co-head of the Built Innovation Programme in the Science Innovation for Climate Change and Energy Directorate in the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. It's a really timely opportunity to discuss this upcoming innovation competition for Green Home Finance and great to see so many of you interested in the competition and keen to find out more. Over the course of the next 90 minutes, we'll share some context and some more information about the programme and about some of the policy background to it as well. And we'll give you an insight into the criteria and terms and conditions that might be applied to the programme, as well as some of the timelines, so that you can prepare your organisation for the competition, which is due to be launched the other side of the summer. And there'll also be the opportunity for you to ask us some questions and answers, and we'll tell you a little bit more about how to do that in just a moment. We may not be able to answer all of your questions today, but any that we can't, we'll make sure we take away, and we'll tell you where to find the answers to those as soon as we have them. We've got a cracking team running this, not just from BEIS, but also from PricewaterhouseCoopers and their consortium, including the Carbon Trust and others. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Dan from PwC, who's going to tell you how the rest of the event's going to run. Dan, over to you.
Thanks so much, Tim, and good afternoon to you all from me as well. Pleasure to be here, and thanks all for joining. So yes, I'm Dan Dowling. I'm a partner with PwC, and as mentioned by Tim, we, together with the Carbon Trust, are very pleased to be appointed to support BEIS with the operation of this competition and programme delivery. I really think we've got a great team. I hope and expect we'll also be working with many of you in the coming months to further the programme's objectives. Before I do get into the core content, let me just cover some quick housekeeping items. So it's great to see so many of you joining today. We've actually turned off the incoming video and audio at the moment due to the sort of load on the system. So I want to draw your attention in particular to the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens. This is going to be a really important function because it's going to allow you to document your questions as we go through the content of the session, and we've preserved time to answer those questions towards the end. So please use the Q&A to lodge your questions, but also please use the upvote function, which will help you to highlight which questions are most important for us to address in the Q&A that follows. As Tim just mentioned, we will capture all questions and make sure we were able to respond to those in due course if we don't have time to cover them today. I'll just summarize then the key objectives. So the first thing we want to do is to make sure that you actually understand what the Green Home Finance Accelerator programme is, and to help you think about the months ahead in terms of us moving towards competition launch, which we expect in the very early autumn. As part of that, we'll introduce you to some of the basics about the Green Homes Finance Accelerator competition process, the eligibility, and we'll set out the timeline as best we can at this time so you can aid your planning. In hearing more about the programme's conception, design and approach, we'd really like to get your feedback. So the Q&A is one way to do that, but if you've got other comments, questions, feedback you'd like to give, please get in contact with the programme team. We'll share those details later and you can do that. Okay, and the final and important part I just wanted to flag is this is a great opportunity for some of you to meet each other. So we want to just launch the process and the concept of you working together in partnership, if that's the right thing to do, and allow you the opportunity to opt in together to share your details with each other and see how you can connect some of the important interventions you may be able to support. In terms of the agenda for today, we're just working through the welcomes and introductions now. We'll move then to BEIS colleagues telling us a little bit about the policy context which sits behind the programme, and then looking at the Net Zero Innovation Portfolio, which is the broader suite of programmatic interventions that BEIS is setting out, and how the Green Home Finance Accelerator then sits in that context. We will then get into the programme itself and share, as described earlier, some of the details about the design and the process so that you can understand what is required of you. We'll cover some next steps on the programme from here, and then we'll get into that Q&A session and answer some of those key questions that you've got before wrapping up at the end of the 90 minutes, if not earlier. So I'll hand over in a moment, but I just want to say, remind us all for a combination of really important reasons at the moment, not least the net zero strategy for the UK, not least the cost of living crisis, and dare I say it, the heat wave we've been experiencing in recent days. But this is a really important issue in a mission-driven world, but it's also a really significant market opportunity that we can work together to unlock. So let me get things started by saying, thank you for your cooperation, and I really hope we can work together to think ambitiously, creatively, and broadly about how we might participate together in delivering a successful Green Home Finance Accelerator and the market transition we want to see as well. So Grace, I'd love to pass over to you to kick us off on the policy context. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dan. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Grace Shongobi, and I'm part of the Green Finance Policy Delivery team here at BEIS. And I'm going to be talking today with you about the policy context around household decarbonisation. So in the UK, there are around 30 million buildings, and the majority of these are domestic properties. So that's like houses and flats, and their energy use accounts for around 17% of the UK's total carbon emissions. So decarbonising buildings is central to the UK's net zero challenge. The government have set out an ambition, first in the Clean Growth strategy, which called for as many homes as possible to achieve EPC Band C by 2035, where cost effective, practical and affordable, and subsequently set a goal in the net zero strategy to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050. But as you will all be aware, this is no small feat. As one article put it, the UK has the coldest, oldest and leakiest housing stock in Europe, which means that our buildings are often very poorly insulated and very costly to retrofit. Tackling this challenge has become even more urgent as the current cost of living crisis means that helping people make their homes more energy efficient and therefore cheaper to run, particularly as we move on into the winter months, has never been more pressing. So now that we've identified the challenge, we can talk a bit around what is it that can be done to tackle it. In the 2021 Heat and Building Strategy, the government set out their plans to tackle household decarbonisation, and this includes phasing out installation of gas boilers by 2035 and transitioning to low carbon heating technology. We also have the £450 million boiler upgrade scheme, which launched earlier this year, and that aims to support households who want to make the switch to low carbon heat pumps with a £5,000 grant. We also have a boost in energy efficiency spending to £1.3 billion due to some additional funding that's been made available for this. And then significant investments have also been made in technology and supply chain innovation, which will improve the performance of these technologies, drive down their costs, and also provide greater value for money, making the transition to energy efficiency more affordable. The Heat and Building Strategy also discusses the adoption of the Fabric First approach to retrofit properties and the government's commitment to providing targeted support for low-income households through schemes such as the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund and the Home Upgrade Grant. We're also scaling up our consumer advice and information service to ensure that households have access to high quality advice and information on their retrofit options. And by the end of the summer, we aim to launch a comprehensive energy advice service on gov.uk. So retrofitting has the potential to deliver a number of benefits beyond just achieving a higher EPC rating. Perhaps the most obvious of these benefits is reducing energy bills, which is realised when energy consumption is reduced. And this is more important than ever, as I mentioned previously, given the current cost of living crisis. Another benefit is the increased thermal comfort that you experience in a more energy efficient home. Homes will be warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer. And I think I might speak for everyone when I say the latter of that we would really appreciate right about now. So retrofitting also has the potential to transform communities. This is something we have witnessed in the Green Home Finance Innovation Fund, which is the predecessor to the Accelerator programme, where old and tired properties have been improved and made more energy efficient. And there is also evidence that shows a clear positive correlation between increased energy efficiency and property value. So that's another benefit we can see from retrofitting, as well as research that suggests owners of more energy efficient properties are less likely to default on mortgage repayments, as they would have more disposable income because of lower energy bills to ensure that their payments are made on time. And lastly, of course, we have a legal obligation to hit our net zero targets, which the government is very much committed to achieving. So thank you for listening. I'll hand over now to Ruth, who will talk through the importance of green finance and our policy work in this area.
So through the policies Grace has mentioned, government has committed to investing around 6.6 billion in energy efficiency and low carbon heating. This is obviously a very significant commitment, but the cost of achieving EPCC by 2035 has been estimated to be up to 65 billion. And then ballpark estimates for the cost of getting to net zero suggest this could cost up to 250 billion. So in order to meet both of these targets, we know that facilitating investment by homeowners into their own properties is going to be absolutely critical. Currently, the government strategy is to focus funding on the people that need it most. So low income, fuel poor households living in the least efficient homes. And what this means is that for many in what we class as the able to pay sector, they're not going to be as eligible for government schemes. However, just because we call them able to pay doesn't mean they'll necessarily be able to afford investment out of pocket. The average cost of getting to EPCC is about 8K, which most households cannot afford through their savings. And that's a cost which will obviously be far higher where the property is rated E, G, or F. And what this essentially amounts to is that private finance is going to be extremely important for those homeowners looking to improve the energy performance of their homes and reduce their energy bills, particularly for those people for whom less government support is available. The government has committed to facilitating the growth of the green home finance market as part of the 2019 Green Finance Strategy, and then again as part of the Heat and Building Strategy. The aim of our policies is to drive forward the number and diversity of products in the green finance market in order to ensure that there are a range of financing options available to meet the needs of all types of consumers. Thus far, we have run the Green Home Finance Innovation Fund, which was the precursor to the Accelerator, and I'll talk about in a second. The Green Home Finance Accelerator, which obviously we're in the process of launching. We're also engaging in conversations with the new UK Infrastructure Bank to explore how they could potentially play a role to support the scale up of green retail lending. And finally, we have consulted with mortgage lenders on ways in which they might work to improve the energy performance of their portfolio. And we're due to publish a response to that soon. So the Green Home Finance Innovation Fund was the precursor to the Green Home Finance Accelerator, and similarly made grant funding available for the development and pilot of green finance products. The competition wrapped up earlier this year. The evaluation is currently underway and is expected to be complete in spring 2023, although we'll get an interim evaluation in the summer. In the end, the programme awarded 1.8 million to 3 projects. These were the Add to My Mortgage platform developed by Home Infrastructure Technology Limited, which was a digital platform that connected green vendors to mortgage lenders and then enabled consumers to pay for green home upgrades at the point of sale via an advance on their existing mortgage. The Monmouthshire Building Society Valuer project, which was a research project looking at how EPC bands correlate to property values, as well as a mortgage product where the rate reflected the extra property value gain from being a more efficient home. And then the Green Home Mortgage project by Lloyds, which was an energy saving platform that offered customers tailored decarbonisation plans for their properties, as well as additional borrowing on their mortgage to finance green home improvements with a £500 cashback incentive, and will shortly be publishing some reports on these 3 projects. So there's a few key differences between the Innovation Fund and the Accelerator programme. The first point obviously being the scale. The second is that while you can see for the Innovation Fund, the focus was really on mortgage-related products for domestic owner-occupiers, we're keen that the Accelerator helps applicants explore alternative product models or green mortgage products with genuinely novel and innovative features. And then the final point is just in the timescales. The lessons we've learned from the Innovation Fund have been fed into the design of the accelerator, and we've learned a lot about how long it can take the sector to develop and pilot new products. So the longer time period and the two-phase structure of the competition just reflect that. I will now hand over to Tim Cook, who is going to talk a little bit more about the Net Zero Innovation Portfolio.
Thanks, Ruth, and thanks, Grace, for your wonderful run through of the policy context that we are sat in at the moment. Just before I do, I will flag, great to see a couple of questions coming in through the Q&A. If you have any more, make sure you dive in there. If you want to send your questions in, and if you want to upvote them, you can do. Also, a huge apology, just as I started with impeccable timing, a big lorry has turned up outside the house making lots of noise, so apologies if you get a bit of background. I'm going to step us back a little bit and just give you a bit of broader context about what's going on with respect to net zero innovation. So, yeah, wonderful, thank you. We, over the course of the last 12-18 months or so, the government's published a series of documents which have set out the 10-point plan for the green industrial revolution, our net zero strategy, and indeed the research and innovation needs that we have in order to get to the targets that were set out in the net zero strategy. A couple of interesting points to pick out of that, one of which is that the technologies needed to deliver almost half of the CO2 reductions by 2050 are still in that prototype phase, which means that we've got a lot of innovation work still to do and still ahead of us. If you could skip to the next slide, please, that would be wonderful. And so as a result of that, the government has committed a £1 billion net zero innovation portfolio, and that covers 10 particular areas which are set out on the right hand side there, one of which is buildings, which we're here, of course, here today to talk about. And this isn't starting from nothing. We're starting from the previous £500 million energy innovation programme, which was run between 2016 to 2021. And I think it's really important to say that while I mentioned about technologies earlier on, there's also a lot of innovation that's needed in business processes and finance and everything else, which is one of the reasons why we are here today. If you could skip to the next one, please. I just want to touch on some of the work that we've done on the Legacy Energy Innovation Programme, specifically in the built environment. There are 8 programmes in particular, one of which is the Green Home Finance Innovation Fund that Ruth spoke to earlier. But we've put a lot of investment into energy innovation in the built environment already. And that has brought us now into a couple of key programmes that we're running under the new £1 billion net zero innovation programme. So if you could skip to the next slide, please. One of those is the Heat Pump Ready programme. You may be very familiar with this already. About £60 million worth of innovation to help facilitate large-scale, high-density heat pump deployment across the UK, really focused on achieving those very ambitious heat pump targets that are set out in the net zero strategy. We've already published the Stream 1 and Stream 3 projects that have been funded under that, and we'll be announcing the Stream 2 projects in the coming months. And then, of course, the other key programme that we've got under the NZIP portfolio in the built environment is the Green Home Finance Accelerator, the one that we're here to talk to you about today. It's a £20 million innovation programme, as you've been told already, to support development of innovative green finance products and services, helping homeowners to decarbonise their homes and address some of those challenges that Grace and Ruth have so eloquently set out for you before. I also said at the start that we've got a wonderful team delivering this. It's not just us from Bays, and so that's probably my segue to hand over to the team at PwC and Emily in particular, who's going to take you into a little bit more detail about the programme itself. Emily.
Hi everybody. Hi, I'm Emily Farmer. I'm from PwC. I'm the Senior Programme Manager on the Green Home Finance Accelerator. So in this next section, which will probably take about half an hour, myself and my colleagues, Oliver Knight, who is also from PwC and is the fund manager, and Pietro Rocco from Carbon Trust, who is our technical lead, will take you through an overview of the programme and look at an introduction to the competition process, eligibility and assessment criteria, and timelines. So firstly, just to give a bit of background and aims of the programme, and I think we've covered off that this is really about providing up to 20 million grant funding to support the development and piloting of innovative green finance products and services for owner occupiers and private landlords. And that's with an aim to do three things. One, to accelerate that activity of product design innovation in the green finance market. Also to support the establishment of a diverse range of green finance products. So building on the previous program that we discussed, where that was quite focused on mortgage products, we're looking for a much more diverse range of products and services, and also enable an increase in the uptake of home retrofit measures and really driving and stimulating demand for that. To give you an idea about how, so if we go back, to give you an idea about how that 20 million would be split, we're anticipating that per project, we would be allocating a maximum of £200,000 for discovery phase and 2 million for the pilot phase. I'll speak in a little bit about the two different phases, but we're looking to fund up to 20 projects in two phases with a latest end date of March 2025. I'm going to hand over to Pietro, who's going to provide a bit more detail around some of the challenges that we are facing.
Thanks very much, Emily, and hi everyone. I'm Pietro Rocco. I'm the technical lead from the Carbon Trust side. So as part of this exercise, we've conducted an extensive market segmentation and market research exercise that have identified, as this slide shows, some of the pressure points and challenges that are faced by the market. So policy pressures to do with new energy efficiency standards, the development of new builds, and new laws and regulations affecting the affordability of green homes and their refurbishment. There are also some challenges faced by homeowners themselves. Dan and Grace and other colleagues have mentioned the increased cost of living, rapidly increasing energy bills, changes in house prices, as well as the increasing costs of capital on loans and mortgages. The other side of the coin is also access to deposit and savings products, the availability of financial products and the actual application for financing that customers are facing in the market. And finally, the challenges that are very specific to green homes. So awareness of specific financing options, awareness of actual retrofit benefits and the options that customers have. The affordability of the additional fees and costs associated with retrofits, and then some of the, I guess, the slightly broader ones. So funding the unforeseen is something that we have found. So these sudden shocks and how they balance out with green homes, the cost of refurbishment, and then a general awareness of the physical risks associated with climate change and how they feed into the sort of green homes area. If we could move on to the next slide, I'll just cover briefly here how we've segmented capital demand for green home financing, and then I'll move on to some of the customer journeys or the financing journeys that we've taken a deeper dive into. So these should be relatively familiar. Green homes finance and home finance generally will cover broadly the same sort of customer base or stakeholder base. So on the individual side, we're looking at first-time buyers, remortgages, the homeowner landscape, as well as buy-to-let landlords. And on the institutional side, the other actors that sort of feed into that, local authority housing associations, but also those slightly less kind of direct on the purchase side actors like utility companies and the retrofit manufacturers, as well as some of the construction landscape. Moving to the next slide, if we look at kind of the home ownership milestones, we can see that customers of all types face multiple milestones on their journeys of home ownership, everything from sort of setting a budget and making an offer and then financing a purchase to the day-to-day considerations of actual home ownership. That can be anything from sort of the cost of living that we've talked about, but also changing energy suppliers, general refurbishment, and then, as we've discussed with the sort of heat pump readiness or the boiler upgrades, those sort of appliance replacements. One thing I do quite want to highlight here is that this journey is presented here as a sort of linear, but there are elements of cyclicality there. So when thinking of upsizing or downsizing or taking advantage of various financial windfalls, we might find ourselves back at the setting a budget, making an offer, financing a purchase. And in the road to 2050, these are long-term journeys that will cycle back, and various milestones will appear again or for the first time at various points. So keeping those in mind, I'd like to move on to the journeys that we've kind of drawn up to provide a bit more color. So the very standard one of a homeowner or tenant that we're all pretty familiar with, facing rising energy prices or physical risks or regulatory pressures and the actual increased cost of capital. Each of these provide different opportunities for green homes financing to enter in different interactions between the various market actors. So looking, for example, at the rising energy prices, dealing directly with utility companies and the opportunities for challenger utility-led projects, or on the regulatory pressures, so which address directly in that sort of retrofit environment, looking at the cost of outlays, interacting with developers and construction or retrofit manufacturers, and dealing with the high street banks or specialist lenders, or opportunities for low carbon energy efficiency installers. Again, you'll note that retrofit is highlighted here under regulatory pressures, but the next slide highlights that journey a little bit more specifically as it fits into sort of various areas. On the homeowner side, which is primarily dealing with the sort of retrofit, we can see the interactions with local authorities, with the utility companies, and from a homeowner perspective, directly with the sort of retrofit environment, all of which carry to a certain extent an initial cost or outlay consideration. One arrow that isn't appearing here is also on the local, going from the local authorities to the actual developers or constructors and retrofit manufacturers. But all of these have this initial outlay that needs to be met in order to be achieved effectively, and to prompt consumers of all types to undertake a retrofit. And those will then feed into the market for capital, whether through traditional routes, on the residential real estate value chain, the emergence of specialist lenders, and the sort of low carbon energy efficiency side of things. So far, we've covered this from the perspective of homeowners, but if we look at the buy-to-let market, we begin to see how some of these journeys can also come together, which is highlighted on the next slide. So taking the perspective of a buy-to-let investor, they effectively encompass two personas. Initially, as an investor, they will be looking to purchase a home, and the home purchase journey becomes very relevant there. So dealing with estate agents and brokers, at various stages, and looking at kind of traditional capital supply. So the increasing price of mortgage is a consideration. House prices can also fit into that. But once they own the property and they rent it out, they take on the persona of the landlord, facing a different set of pressures, but ones that are equally relevant. So the regulatory pressures to do with EPC ratings, looking at the retrofit themselves, and then how they fund that. So this is a really good example of those sort of one individual, two personas over various periods of time, and it really kind of speaks well to that original slide on the milestones. So now that you have a bit more information on some of the insights our research has flagged, I'll pass back to Emily to go over the objectives of the GHFA.
Thank you. Yes, so to tackle some of these challenges, we've got 6 objectives for this programme. Firstly is really to support providers to design, develop and pilot a range of those innovative green finance products to enable home energy efficiency and low carbon heating improvements. Secondly, to develop capability among finance providers in that design, development and commercialization of those products for retrofit, recognizing that some finance providers may not have that capability currently. Thirdly, we're looking to help develop partnerships between lenders, investors, advice services, energy efficiency, low carbon heating and property value supply chains, really to help with that innovation and to broaden the diversity of the products that are being proposed. Fourthly, we're supporting our providers to investigate and understand the consumer barriers and motivators for energy efficiency and low carbon heating investment. And following on from that, the 5th one is about helping to reduce those consumer barriers. And then lastly, we want to be establishing an evidence base to enable effective design and development of future green finance propositions, so that we are able to inform future policy development as well. So this slide provides an overview of the grant competition as our current understanding of our plans. The competition will be delivered across 2 phases, which I inferred a couple of slides back. And really this will be split between a discovery phase and a pilot phase. And this approach has been adopted to ensure that grant recipients have sufficient opportunity to fully explore the market viability of their proposed products, also to refine and tweak those products in the light of consumer and market testing, and then thoroughly investigate the supporting framework required to launch and pilot their products. So taking the discovery phase first, so that will be our first phase, which will be up to 6 months. We're expecting to be funding approximately 20 projects. And as I mentioned before, there'll be fairly low value grants in the region of up to a maximum of £200,000. And this phase will be an opportunity for applicants to undertake research, really looking at acquiring the knowledge, skills and consumer insights for developing new products, and to be able to produce robustly evidenced product pilot proposals, so providing evidence that the products are viable and that we can take them forward into the 2nd phase, which would be the pilot phase. And this would be up to 15 months. Of the 20 projects that we expect to fund within the discovery phase, we expect to take forward approximately 15 of those, and those would be higher value grants up to a maximum of £2 million. And so those will be, this phase is really an opportunity to create and test those products on the market. In terms of timeframes, then at the bottom of this slide, we're looking at opening the competition for the discovery phase in early September for a period of 6 weeks. And so by the end of October, that competition will close, and we'd be looking to award grants by the end of this year. Then the first half of next year would be the opportunity to undertake the discovery phase, and then for the pilot phase competition to happen in the summer of next year with, as I say, up to 15 months. So we'd be looking for the pilot phase projects to complete by November 2024. And then there would be an opportunity for some programme closure activity up until March 2025, which is a hard close. So if we go into a little bit more detail on the discovery phase, these are the competition steps for the upcoming phase. We're currently engaging, so we're making the market and stakeholders aware of this programme, as part of this webinar, but we'll also have our website, which will provide more information and other events and opportunity for you to feedback on the approach. Then as the competition opens in early September, you will have an opportunity to apply and complete an application for discovery funding. We would then be assessing that after the end of October, when the competition closes, by an expert panel against predefined eligibility and assessment criteria, which my colleague will take you through in a minute. And then, pending due diligence checks, the successful applicants will be issued with a grant offer by the end of this year. And then, if all goes well, the discovery phase can begin early next year. And then, as I say, the projects that are participating in the discovery phase will have that opportunity to progress to the pilot phase. And we will repeat these steps for that phase, commencing in the summer of 2023. Then also we've got a requirement where we would like dissemination and knowledge sharing during and at the end of each phase to be a key requirement on the Green Home Finance Accelerator. So applicants will be expected to share useful data, lessons learned and experience through relevant industry forums and with our team. Now Oliver's going to take us through some of the eligibility and assessment criteria and timelines.
Thanks, Emily, and afternoon, everyone. So the following represents eligibility criteria which bidders would need to meet. However, I should say this is provisional and subject to change following further development and, of course, feedback from you. The fund will be open to applicants from finance and mortgage lenders with a retail presence, such as banks, building societies, and fintech organisations, and partner organisations that could deliver energy assessments and retrofit services. For example, energy suppliers and smart data analytic companies, retrofit advice providers, and energy efficiency low carbon heating installers. The project must be within the competition of scope, which I'll go into in the next slide. The project activities must be conducted within the UK. The project must be led by a UK-based private sector business, although bids from consortia with a single lead partner are welcome. Grant proposals, as previously mentioned, aren't to exceed £200,000 for the discovery phase and £2 million per project for the pilot phase. Projects funded need to demonstrate additionality and value for money. Grant funding will only be awarded to projects that deliver innovative new work and will not be available for funding retrospective activity. The next couple of slides, we just want to focus on scope of the competition. So product design, we are keen to generate a mixed portfolio of projects, particularly product types the market is less likely to develop on its own without support. Consideration should be given to finance products that will stimulate action from a wide range of customer segments. Secondly, providing energy efficiency and or low carbon heating advice. A lack of knowledge and access to bespoke advice on retrofit options is at least as important as finance, if not more so. So advice provision or clear signposting to high quality third party advice needs to be a core component of any successful green lending product. And thirdly, installation verification. Applicants should explore and propose installation verification methods that would be integrated into the green finance product that's developed. Energy efficiency and low carbon heating measures can only realize their full energy and cost saving potential when installed correctly and in appropriate situations. So just to go into a few example verification options, these could include pre and post improvement energy performance certificates, smart meter enabled thermal energy efficiency ratings to measure the post retrofit thermal performance of homes using smart meters, Green Deal occupancy assessment model or proof of works Trustmark's MCS accreditation combined with a deemed scores approach, such as is currently used for the energy company obligation, and approved advisor and installer list to ensure homeowners are getting advice and receiving installations from pre-approved qualified installers. On this slide, we want to run you through the indicative assessment criteria, which I should say is in development and still subject to change. So firstly, addressing the competition objectives that Emily outlined previously. Applicants will be expected to describe how the proposed financial product would be expected to incentivize and enable homeowners to improve energy efficiency and or low carbon heating of existing properties, reduce their energy consumption, or otherwise reinforce a market relationship between energy efficiency properties and increased property value. To describe the market segment the proposed product could reach and how this would address the current market gap, and to describe how the discovery phase funding would be deployed to build market intelligence and consumer insights, refine the proposed product design, build any required delivery partnerships, develop retrofit advice options or signposting to third-party advice, explore and reach conclusions on verification approaches, and prepare the product for piloting with consumers in the market. Deliverability, to submit an appropriate and credible project work plan, milestones and deliverables for the discovery phase, to submit a clearly defined project management structure and partnership partners roles. Skills and expertise, capacity, experience and capability of the proposed project members, including product development. And finally, costs, project costing, including justification of the costs and leverage of other funding sources. So just wanted to touch quickly, we'll give you an overview of the subsidy control requirements. So subsidy control principles permit a proportion of eligible costs to be funded by BEIS in this competition. So applicants are therefore required to have non-public sector funding in place to cover the balance of the eligible project costs. Match funding may come from a company's own resources or external private sector investors, but it must not include funding attributable to any public authority or EU institution. Applicants must state if they are applying for or expect to receive any funding from their project from other public authorities in the UK or elsewhere. Any other public funding will be accumulated with BEIS funding to ensure that the public funding limit and the grant intensity levels are not exceeded for the project. The proposed maximum public sector funding levels for GHFA are outlined in the grant intensity table shown here. And finally, applicants are responsible for establishing that they fall within the competition funding rules before submitting an application. Finally, a quick reminder of the discovery phase competition timeline, which we expect to have finalized by early August, if not before. We expect the discovery phase competition to open in early September for 6 weeks, closing mid to end of October. Grant awards will likely then be made by December 2022, and we anticipate discovery phase projects to kick off in January 2023. In terms of next steps, I wanted to draw your attention to a few areas. So the GHFA competition launch event is expected to be held in early September, and we hope we can circulate registration instructions by the end of this month. The launch event will provide you with final detailed overview of the eligibility and assessment criteria informed by your feedback, full instructions on how to apply, for example, application form and user-friendly guidance on how to complete it, and then final timelines, including deadlines for application submission. We are planning to set up various channels to support potential applicants navigate the competition process, including, firstly, webinars to provide further opportunity for interested organisations to be reminded of the application process and context, including for those applicants who might not have experience applying for government funding previously. Secondly, a dedicated email inbox, which we have already set up for any queries relating to the programme. And thirdly, a website is in development, which will be a source for webinar recordings, the latest guidance and regularly updated FAQs. A key factor to success for a number of proposed products will be partnerships. So to support this, we are proposing the following. Firstly, to have a shared contact list for organisations to opt in or out of. Permission to share can be granted at various points, for example, when engaging in upcoming events or via our website or directly by email. And secondly, we're in the process of thinking about how we can support for matchmaking opportunities for you. And so more details on this will follow shortly. Final thing to say is to go check out the GHFA webpage for all the latest information. So the webpage should go live today prior to a full website going live in the coming weeks. There will be information on further market events. The web page will act as a repository for the latest information on the program and the competition, which will also include a short form allowing you and others who are not able to make it today to feedback on the proposed eligibility, timeline, and other areas. And finally, in due course, you'll be able to register for the launch event I mentioned. On that, I'll now hand back over to Tim to begin the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Oliver and Emily and everyone else for the run through. I'm just going to jump in on a couple of themes that I've seen coming up in the Q&A while we wait for a few more to come through. So I'd say, first of all, keep the Q&A coming, particularly if you've got anything that is focused on the terms and conditions, the criteria, the eligibility, and so on for the program, because that's where we can provide the most benefit right here, right now, I think. I'd also say thanks for the very many policy suggestions that we've had coming through in the Q&A. I'm sure the policy team who are sat there in the background seeing them all will take them all on board, but the session today isn't really about bringing forward new policy ideas. It's specifically to give you further information on the Green Home Finance Accelerator program itself. So if you could try and target your questions at some of the details of the program that have just been shared with you, that would be great. We've had a few suggestions and questions coming through on scope. I'm going to see if perhaps one of my policy colleagues might want to say a few words around that in a moment. I think one of the things I would say on scope is there have been some great questions in there around the scope of the program. Not all of them, some of them we I think might want to take away and consider and give you a kind of more thought through answer, but I will wait on some of my policy colleagues to indicate if anyone wants to come in and touch on some of those scope questions a little bit more. While I'm waiting for that, on the Green Home Finance Accelerator, a few of you, Green Home Finance Innovation Fund, a few of you have been asking whether about more details on that. We don't have information we can share right here, right now. We are looking to publish summaries at some point, as soon as Ruth said. We will also, though, be having matchmaking events coming up, so there may be the opportunity to meet with them and indeed other organisations who are already doing work in this space. I'm just going to jump into the Q&A now and see if there are any that want addressing. I don't know whether I could call on Stephen or any of your team on the any of the scope questions.
Yes, Tim, sorry, just getting my camera turned on if I can. I was just going to address the what do you class as a product question, because I think that's probably a pretty crucial one for this session. I mean, really what we're talking about here is any green lending product that will allow homeowners, either owner-occupiers or private sector landlords, to invest in energy efficiency or low carbon heating retrofit, or possibly both. So we're not looking here necessarily at just mortgages. We're not looking at just concessional green unsecured lending. We're very much outcome focused. Kinds of solutions that they think could, and that would be attractive to consumers who, as I've said already, sort of fall within the broad able to pay sector within either owner-occupiers or private rented sector. So I think we're being agnostic and open-minded on exactly what the product could look like. It's very much delivering the outcomes to the target audience, or a sort of a cross sector of customer segments that we're trying to achieve here.
Thank you very much. I'm just looking through some of the other questions that are coming in. There is a question around subsidy control. I say, first of all, on that, they definitely encourage partner consortia organisations. We can follow up on that with some explicit more detail around subsidy control and the implications for project consortia. And I'm guessing that the question was coming from the angle of where those consortia are made up of projects not from the UK. I might now ask if one of the PwC team, there's a question around the matchmaking events mentioned and help building consortia. I don't know if one of the PwC team wants to come in and talk to that question.
Hi, it's Emily. Yes, so we're hoping to facilitate some matchmaking opportunities. We will be looking over the next week or so to come up with the best ideas for doing that, whether we use a platform, event. So we haven't yet confirmed that. If you have particular preferences for how you'd like to do that, then by all means do say. And as Oliver mentioned, we will hope to sort of build a contact list that, with your consent, we will be able to share among participants and those who haven't been able to join this particular event, so that you can make your own connections with potential partners as well.
Thanks very much, Emily. I am going to give policy team forewarning that there's a question about past 2035 we're using EPC only, which I might be turning to them on in a moment. So if anyone wants to jump in and answer that from the policy side of the house, that would be wonderful. I am just going through the other questions that are coming in to see if there's anything else that we can answer. There's a question about whether the pilot project match funding is the same percentage rates as the discovery stage funding. I am pretty certain that the answer to that question is yes, but we will confirm that in writing when we have gone through the questions, and we'll kind of publish some of this on the website to make sure we give really clear answers to questions like that are very important eligibility criteria. Policy colleagues, anyone want to come in on the Fabric First retrofit obviously key, but does this mean using only PAS 2035 or using an EPC? Anything you want to come in on that?
So I think that's one we'll just want to reflect on that and feedback in slightly slower time. But I think that's definitely a crucial question. So if we can respond to that in writing after the event, that would be fantastic.
There's a question here from Simon, who has asked for the eligibility criteria for which companies can be policy lead organisations for the proposal. Oliver, I don't know if you want to jump back a few slides and just go into that. There are a couple of other questions around consortia and so on, so I think people would welcome just revisiting that slide if you're happy to do that. And if we could jump back in the slides as well, that'd be great.
We go one more slide forward. That's it. So I can run through this again. So I don't know if Bayes colleagues wanted to expand on the kind of the list that we've identified, but essentially, in terms of who the fund is open to, so as applicants from finance and mortgage lenders with a retail presence, so that's identified currently as banks, building societies, and fintech organisations, and on partner organisations that could deliver energy assessments and retrofit services. So we're identifying that as examples. So energy suppliers and smart data analytic companies, retrofit advice providers, and energy efficiency low carbon heating installers. But that is not an exhaustive list. So yeah, it's not limited. You're not limited to those types of organizations.
Great, thanks very much, Oliver, for your answer. I am just going through the other questions that we've got here.
Tim, there are a couple of questions around the use of the up to £2 million grant funding, which I'll maybe just
that'd be great. Thank you.
So, I mean, the answer here is that none of the Bayes grant funding can be used for or used to underwrite or support the lending itself. So this is very much grant funding for project delivery, for the design, testing, the pilot, and the running of the finance products. But it is not and cannot be used to support the actual lending. That would need to be delivered by the project partners themselves in the normal way.
Thanks very much for clarifying that one for us, Stephen. I had missed that one in there. The number of questions coming through is slowly diminishing. I'm just trying to see if there's anything new that's popped in while you were talking there, Stephen. Will the list of contacts be shared so that we can start matchmaking as early as possible? I'm pretty certain the answer to that is yes, for those people who have said that they are willing for their contact details to be shared. That's one of the things that I think we're going to be asking you to do immediately afterwards. I don't know if Emily or Oliver wants to jump on and say a little bit more about how that contact sharing will work. Emily, Oliver, either of you.
Hi. Yes, so after this event, we'll send out around a short survey with just a couple of questions, but also asking for your consent for your details to be shared. So off the back of that, we will then make available a wider contact list, but also recognise some of the comments that are coming through around, that might not be fully sufficient, and so we will be planning, more than that in terms of our matchmaking.
Thanks very much, Emily. There are also a couple of questions coming in around the role of different partner organisations in consortia, and who can be lead, and the role of non-finance providers. That's and in particular banks with retail presence or fintech organisations can apply as lead. We'll take all of those together and try and give you a bit more clarity, I think, written down, to make sure that we give you a really clear answer on who can be lead, who can be consortia partners, and what the consortia needs to entail. That's clearly something that we need to give a bit more clarity on, and we'll try and do that as soon as possible in writing, so that it's all written down rather than trying to give you a off the top of the head verbal answer right now. So we'll try and address those questions, particularly around consortia and who can be lead in writing very soon after the event. There's a question. I don't know if Stephen or others are in a position to answer the question around what in due course means in relation to the lenders consultation. I suspect you're probably not in a position to be able to answer that, but if you are able to give any more detail on that, please do jump in.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you are correct. We can't provide an answer to that one at the moment. I mean, in due course means that we are absolutely planning to publish a response, but we do not have a date at this time. But keep posted, and hopefully hopefully it will be sooner rather than later, but I definitely don't have a date yet.
Okay, thank you. There is I think a few more questions coming through on who can be project leads and who can't. As I say, we'll get a clear answer to those as soon as we possibly can. Can the 2 million be used to cover platform development for a new startup in fintech? That's a good question. Again, that would need to come back to whether that's what partner organisations you would also need to be bringing to the fore in order to make sure that you can deploy that the platform development alongside an actual product into the market. There's a question I don't know policy team want to address around whether the grant will cover both secured and unsecured innovations for green financing. If you're able to come in on that.
Sorry, I was just typing an answer to another question, so I missed the detail there, Tim. Sorry, could you just repeat?
Yeah, absolutely. Hang on, I've lost the question now. Will this grant cover both secured and unsecured innovations for green financing?
So certainly, yeah. I mean, if I've understood that question correctly, you know, are we looking for projects to develop both secured and unsecured green finance products? Then the answer is absolutely. You know, we're very keen to move beyond just the sort of the standard green mortgage secured green finance product that we're seeing in the market at the moment. So if lenders can come up with proposals and they think there's a genuine consumer need for them and they represent genuine innovation, absolutely. Very keen to see those sorts of product types.
There's a question here, thanks Stephen. There's a question here about property linked finance and things that would require a change in legislation to be achieved. I might start with an answer at that, but given the reference to specific legislation, I might then kind of turn to policy colleagues to see if they have anything else that they want to add in. Broadly, if what you're proposing requires a change in legislation, then one of the things that we would be looking for you to do is set out how much of a risk that requirement poses to the success of the project. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't get funding if it required change to legislation, but being able to set out in your application how that how your project might inform the change in legislation and how much of a risk to the success of the project those legislation changes not being forthcoming might be, would be the general approach to innovation funding in this space. We definitely don't want to rule something out just because the current legislative framework makes it difficult, but we would need to see you articulating that in terms of the risk to the programme and how that might be addressed by you as a project or others. I don't know if any of the policy colleagues want to come in on the specific legislation around property linked finance.
I mean, I think my instinct on that would be to say that would probably be challenging. I think the real driver of this obviously is the desire to see products tested or piloted in the market from, I can't remember the exact dates, but you know, really from sort of the summer next year. If regulatory changes were required before products could be made to work in a pilot environment, then I think that would probably rule direct property linked finance options out, unless it was going through the Green Deal legislation route, which obviously does already exist, but anything new would need to be in a position to deliver as a pilot by next summer. And I think it's unlikely that property linked finance, for example, in its truest sense, would be able to achieve that.
Thanks, Stephen.
But always happy to hear otherwise.
But importantly, if your proposal does rely on legislation changes or others, as I say, you do need to set out the risk, identify that in your risk, and set out how you're going to manage it, and in particular the implication of not getting that those changes. So if product manufacturers of energy efficiency projects demonstrate and highlight benefits of their project to the project providers. I'm assuming that question is around some of the matchmaking events. Yes, absolutely, will provide the opportunity for people to undertake that kind of matchmaking engagement with other organisations. A couple of questions also around the FCA, one around FCA certification, and one around FCA sandboxes. I think both of those are questions that the project team will take away and try to provide an answer on as soon as we can in writing, to make sure we give you the right answer on that one. I don't see any questions that we have missed, unless someone wants to, one of our team wants to jump in and tell me otherwise. I will give a couple more seconds for anyone to flag other questions. You can keep the questions coming, both into the mailbox and via the website and so on. And we will keep the engagement and the Q&A going. There will be other webinars and the matchmaking events, a few requests for those to be in person as well. So we'll feed that, we'll take that into account as the planning goes ahead with those, and let you know on that. I'm going to take the opportunity then to do a quick wrap up then, unless I see any other questions come through imminently. As I say, we will take any that we haven't been able to answer and give you a formal written answer to them, set that out on the website. Stephen, you popped.
Tim, yeah, sorry, I popped off again. So really just to cover off the FCA questions,
yeah.
A couple of those have popped up. I mean, I think, again, similar to the previous question about legislative changes, the real driver here is getting projects in a state where they can be piloted in the market by next summer, and it is almost certain that FCA approval, either through sort of full FCA approval or some other type of substantive approval, whether that's sandbox or so on, would almost certainly need to be in place. That is something that we definitely did, our projects that we're delivering as part of the Green Home Finance Innovation Fund did run into some challenges around. They were able to circumvent those and achieve the right approvals in time. It did take a lot of work, so certainly one of the things would be urging project participants for the accelerator to do is to engage with FCA as soon as possible and to begin that approvals journey as soon as possible, because absolutely it can take longer than one would anticipate, but certainly there is no sort of dispensation for any of these projects to sort of circumvent the normal approvals processes with FCA or indeed any other certification body for any other element of the delivery. So yes, those absolutely would need to be considered and built into the project delivery or the proposals delivery timelines.
Yeah, no, really good point. Thanks, Stephen. And yeah, engage early, I think, is the key message there. So I'm going to start to wrap things up there. I hope that today's event piqued your interest in the programme and has been useful to you in terms of providing some of the information that you need to prepare yourselves for the competition that's going to come up the other side of the summer. We will, as I say, get answers to some of those questions that we've not been able to answer today and put them on the website as soon as we can. And we will also keep you updated with any more questions that come in, and the webinars and so on that are coming up. Do keep your proposals ambitious, be innovative, think creatively, and take advantage of the collaboration opportunities, workshops and the other events that are coming up over the coming months. Keep an eye on the website for updates on those. Importantly, opt in to sharing your details. That will help us to help you get the best out of the collaboration events that are coming up. We'll shortly let you know when the launch event is going to be, so do register yourselves for that, which is likely to be in early September. We'll get you a date for that as soon as you can. All that remains, I think, for me to say is a huge thank you to all of the team who have been involved in pulling this together, not just from the BASE side, both people in my team, colleagues in policy and commercial side of the house as well, but also our friends at PwC and at the Carbon Trust, who have been instrumental in making today happen. And a huge thanks to you all for coming along, attending, showing interest in the programme. And we look forward to seeing some wonderful bids from you in the autumn. Thank you very much for attending today, and bye-bye.